Thanks for joining me. We're going to be talking about the wildfire situation in Western Canada and specifically how the weather could be playing a role in the spread of these fires in Saskatchewan and Manitoba in the coming days. We'll take a look at some specific communities that have seen evacuations and some impacts across Saskatchewan, Manitoba as well. But keep in mind, I am not there on the ground. We need to be seeking those official sources for the on-the-ground truth, what's actually happening in real time. It can be pretty tricky to get that real-time information when these situations are evolving as quickly as they are. Very stressful situations, trying to getting resources allocated to these fires. It's hard. Everyone's scrambling. So we'll do the best that we possibly can based on what's available on the internet. So with that, let's get straight into it here. This map is from CIFSI and showing the active wildfires across Canada right now, a number of out-of-control fires from northeastern British Columbia to northwestern Ontario, and evacuees from all 5 provinces there, BC, Alberta, Saskatchewan, Manitoba, Ontario, upwards of 25,000 now. And a lot of the big fires causing the problems with a number of communities that have been evacuated across northern Saskatchewan and northwestern Manitoba. So serious situation continuing to unfold here with these relentless northwest winds blowing across the region, contributing to major spread. The other thing that's notable about this page here in the bottom corner, we can see that we've eclipsed 2.1 million hectares burned across Canada. That's our annual average for the country, typically. So we've eclipsed that number as of June the 3rd. The summer has just begun. So it remains to be seen where we're going to go this season. We can just see how that compares to normal. Just a really steady, rapid increase there in area burn from the end of May into the beginning of June, likely to persist in the coming days, and second only to 2023. And of course, we've been seeing some kind of stressful scenes coming out of the prairies here. This one from Alan McLaughlin in the Paw, Manitoba. The sky is just kind of blood red there as the smoke rolls in. Yeah, that can be pretty frightening to see in real time. Looks like it got even darker than that. This one from Brandon Hauk. He got a screenshot of an airport webcam in the Paw at 8 p.m. On Monday evening. It looks like it turned completely black. And keep in mind, the sun doesn't set till after 10 o'clock, so it should still be light. Looks like the sun got completely blotted out by the smoke and the thick clouds. We can see what happened there Monday afternoon and evening. Some really big clouds blew up on top of these fires in Saskatchewan, up to 8 kilometers tall, really thick cloud and a lot of thick smoke, and that casts a significant shadow on the surface of the earth and just blotted out the sun. Pretty frightening to see in real time. This image from Ronge as well, where a fire is quickly approaching the town. We've yet to hear exactly what's going on there, but it did breach the airport on Monday evening. Now, what's going on out there across the landscape? Well, we can see this large kind of counterclockwise circulation in this cloud. This is a big, slow-moving, low-pressure system centered over northern Manitoba and southern Kivalliq region of Nunavut. And it's basically drawing really dry, cool northwest winds down out of the Arctic into the eastern prairies there. So, you can see a lot of cloud. These weather stations across the landscape. That's what you're seeing there. Here, this is Saskatchewan on the map. This is Manitoba here. This is northwestern Ontario. And we can see it continues to be very windy today on Tuesday with very strong winds out of the northwest, just relentless, persistent. And even though the temperatures are not very high, we're still seeing rapid rates of spread because the wind is so strong. We've had reports of winds, like 50 gusting to 80 kilometers an hour. Wind is our most critical variable in weather for determining wildfire spread because it really controls where these fires spread, the direction and the speed that they spread. It can transport burning material, we call them embers, downwind of the fire and kind of start new spot fires ahead of the main head of the fire as it's progressing along. So wind is a factor in all of these situations. So really persistent, dry, even though it's cool, a persistent dry northwest wind causing more smoke. And as you can see, a lot of this nastiness over here, that's smoke from Monday's burn that continues to move out and get sucked into this big circulation here, moving out over Hudson Bay, but new smoke being generated across Saskatchewan and Manitoba today. Looks like a little bit less than Monday, but in general, strong winds continuing to contribute to significant fire growth. Now let's take a look at a weather map to see what could be going on in the next couple of days. Now you're looking at Saskatchewan here, Manitoba here, and this is that low pressure system out just getting into Hudson Bay and through the rest of Tuesday and into Wednesday. It's slow moving off to the east. And the winds are going to kind of die down in the region on Thursday, but start to pick up with a wind shift back to the south on Friday as temperatures start to increase. And looks like we may see some precipitation in parts of Manitoba on Friday and Saturday there. So we'll keep an eye on how much that could play a role. But in general, it looks quite dry across the region. And this is a map that's showing our precipitation anomaly, just showing where precipitation is above or below average. And these browns show where it's below average. It's very dry over the next week here in many of our impacted areas. It's not something we want to see. We're seeing it's quite wet to the north, but dry to the south where most of the fires are. Winds as well, continuing to persist through the region. So, we're continuing with those strong northwest winds throughout the rest of the day on Tuesday and persisting through Wednesday as well, sort of dying down in Wednesday. Thursday, quite light winds across the region. So that'll be a little bit of reprieve, but then they switch around and become quite gusty out of the south on Friday. So we're going to have to keep an eye on that as we look at our kind of individual situations coming up here. And of course, those temperatures across the region remaining cool through, into Thursday. They start to warm up again, and Friday, quite a warm day in that area, basically east of Ronge into northwestern Manitoba, well into the 20s there. So fire danger likely to persist with the dry conditions and breezy conditions at times, and those temperatures coming back up. Looking at our hotspots as indicated from satellites today, we can see some action back here in BC and Alberta, but clearly the lion's share of the action is still here in northern Saskatchewan and northwestern Manitoba, even on such a cool day as today, because it is so windy. Those fires are still incredibly active. Now, to take a look at what's going to be going on here, we're going to be using a couple of tools, but take this one with this is a massive disclaimer I'm about to give for this one. This is a satellite indicated hotspot product based on from firms, and anyone can access this website. And we're looking at where the satellites have detected hotspots, basically inferring where there's fire and area burned on the surface of the earth. But there are many shortcomings with these products, so we have to be very careful with how we use them. One, of course, is that they're not up to date. They're not really timely because, like I say, these images are captured from polar orbiting satellites that make a couple passes over the surface of the earth at any given point during the day. And there's only a handful of them. So, we don't necessarily have up-to-date information on where the fires are. The second major point here is that it's been cloudy the last couple of days across a lot of this area. So, the satellite's not going to be able to see it through all the cloud where all of the hotspots are on the surface of the earth. So it's likely that, in many cases, we can see all these really long, narrow burn paths that have occurred with the rapid wind-driven growth in recent days. But it's likely that the spread has gone well beyond, in many cases, where we're actually seeing here. So just keep that in mind as we look at it. And we're just going to use them as a general guideline as we look at weather information to see what's going on out there. Now, let's also take a look at what's going on. This is our satellite image from Tuesday evening, and it's showing active fires persisting there in central northern Saskatchewan and northwestern Ontario, likely still going there underneath the cloud. But again, we can't really see it there, what's going on. We can infer that it's happening because there's smoke there, and the winds are really strong. There's no precipitation, so likely still seeing some significant growth there in northwestern Manitoba. Let's take a look specifically at the Ronge area now. That fire looks perilously close to the town. That makes me feel a little bit uncomfortable knowing how close it is and how much green is on this kind of west and northwest side of Ronge and Ronge here. Again, our latest readings though, like this was measured, not too recently. These red pixels are the most recent, and they're several hours old. So it's possible that the spread has gotten a little bit closer to the town itself. Still waiting to hear from officials what's going on there in Ronge, but it looks like a very touch and go kind of scary situation there with how close the fire is on the northwest side of town, given that northwest wind that's going to persist through the day on Wednesday as well. Now, one of the things about this region, it's the Canadian Shield. There is a lot of big lakes. That's a natural fuel break. So that does help in slowing the spread of these fires, assuming, the fires aren't burning too intense that they cause what's called long-range spotting, these embers that jump over the lakes that can start fires on the other side, which can happen. But in general, these big lakes are going to be used, they're going to be natural fuel breaks for these wildfires. So this is one of our saving graces up here in the boreal region. But again, there's a lot of green there on the northwest side of Ronge, so you don't want to see that kind of spread with the northwest wind. The fire is upwind of you. You want to consider, where's the fire? Is it upwind of me, and what direction is the wind blowing? In the case of Ronge, another day of northwest winds. that fire is going to be very close to pushing into the town. So we're going to have to keep an eye on what happens there. Hopefully they've got a handle on that situation. That's got to be a very stressful situation for the Ronge area, especially given the forecast here. Those gusty winds persisting through the rest of the day on Tuesday and persisting through Wednesday as well. Slightly less windy, but still out of the northwest and still gusty. So there's still going to be fire spread occurring that day. Thursday, the winds notably kind of calm down and the temperatures start to come up, but then we get gusty again on Friday with those southerly winds picking up. This forecast is coming from a site called Spot WX, and it's going to look like this forecast is going to look similar for most of our communities across the region. Now let's take a look at the Candle Lake region. We can see that fire burning well to the east of the community at this point, but we've been hearing reports that it is slowly backing on this flank as well. But again, the good news in this area here is we've got those strong, persistent northwest winds that'll continue to tend to blow the fire mainly away from the community. And even if we see that southerly wind shift later in the week, it's going to tend to blow the fire kind of back onto itself here, at least on this active flank. We might see some other flanks become active, but in general, that'll continue to kind of keep things going away from the Candle Lake area for the time being. Now, of course, again, disclaimer, seek official sources of information to know exactly what's going on the ground, because this satellite product may not be very accurate, but in general, it's showing that the main action is still well to the east of the community. And of course, very similar forecast to Ronge there, with that gusty northwest wind persisting through Wednesday, dying down through Thursday, and then picking up somewhat through Friday there with that southerly wind. Let's move into the Flin area here, Flin, Flon, and Creighton, Saskatchewan. This map makes me nervous again because we can see there's been really significant wind-driven spread. Anytime you see these long, narrow burn paths, you know that the winds have really been blowing. It looks like this kind of excursion got pushed largely into this lake here, but there is still, and this looks like relatively recent action just on the west side of Creighton there, with these pixels showing, I think this time it was measured in the afternoon hours. So this is a relatively recent reading here, little hole in the cloud perhaps. But in general, yeah, it looks like that was in the afternoon on Tuesday. So the fire is creeping closer to the Flin, Flon, Creighton area. Again, waiting to hear exactly what's going on. We've heard that they haven't lost any structures in Flin, Flon proper yet. But the thing that concerns me about this situation is those persistent northwest winds. If this excursion continues to push, into the area, it's going to get very close to Creighton and Flin Flon, especially on the south side. And depending on what happens, if it's still actively burning later in the week on Friday, for instance, and those south winds pick up, now you're kind of surrounded here in Flin Flon. The north side, that fire is going to burn away from you. But if you've got active fire really close on the south side, it could be a little bit tricky and a pretty scary situation for Flin Flon. So we're not out of the woods there yet for Flin Flon. It's been looking good on this flank, but over here, rapid spread continuing with those strong northwest winds to the south of the community. So we're going to have to see exactly what happens, especially as skies clear out. Maybe we'll get a better picture of where that fire is, because again, similarly gusty winds, slightly less gusty through Wednesday, but that could push that fire south of the community and then becoming gusty out of the south as we get into Friday. So we're going to have to keep an eye on that. Now let's take a look over at Pimicikimak, further to the southeast there. We can see the fire is to the southwest of the town, but these pixels are quite old. Likely seen some spread in this direction given the northwest winds. It may, maybe it's all the way over here south of on the south side of Pipestone Lake. We've yet to see where that is. Again, at the moment, looks like that's burning south of the heart of the community here. But in general, if we see northward spread again as we get into, Friday afternoon, that could be a little bit more concerning for Pimicikimak. But in general, right now, looks like the spread is kind of along to the south, and it's going with that northwest wind. So we'll have to see what happens there, because again, the forecast continues to show strong gusty winds out of the northwest into Thursday, kind of persisting there with those southwesterly winds picking up on Friday as temperatures increase there. So we're gonna have to keep an eye in that community. Now over to Tataskweyak here. This one looks a little bit more concerning to me once again. Again, based on this old burn area, this is several hours old. And so, with those persistent northwesterly winds and the community is right here, that means that the community is largely downwind of the fire. So I'm not sure what's going on the ground there at this point. Hopefully the fire hasn't reached the community, but in general, those strong northwest winds persisting through the next couple of days makes it a little bit more concerning for Tataskweyak. So we're going to have to keep an eye on what happens there, as well as those northwest winds persisting through Wednesday and then becoming lighter on Thursday. Looks like the forecast at the moment for that south wind is a little bit lighter because we're a little bit further east here, but that's kind of less of an issue because a south wind, there's just water to the south of the community. So really the next couple of days seem to be the kind of critical window as to what's going on in this region, and perhaps later in the week with another shift to northwest wind. So we're really going to have to see what's going on there in Tataskweyak. Now over to Lynn Lake in the far northwest corner of Manitoba here, we can see it has burned in a large areas kind of north of the community. We did unfortunately have some structural losses in the northern part of the community in recent days, but it's been much colder and wetter in this region of Manitoba on Tuesday, so likely seeing some muted fire behavior out there despite the winds. And, again, unsure of where the fire is at the moment, but looks like most of the action's been to the north of the community. And with that southerly wind shift, that would, again, tend to blow that fire away from the community later in the week. But we'll have to keep an eye on the situation in the coming days as it continues to change. And now finally over to Pukatawagan, we can see here that fire has been active mostly east of the community. And with that strong northwest wind persisting through the next day or two, that would tend to continue to push the fire away from the community. Again, not too certain on what's happened on the ground. Looks like perhaps maybe eastern portions of the community have seen some impacts, but the majority of the community is still further to the west. And if we haven't seen any kind of creeping or backing of this fire moving westward, especially with that northwest wind, right now this looks a little bit better for Pukatawagan given the northwest winds that would tend to be blowing this fire away from the community. These fires are just colossal across the region. They're all kind of tending to merge together and just burning huge areas of wildland. This is certainly going to be a very memorable season. And of course, in Pukatawagan, very similar conditions as we've seen elsewhere, with strong gusty winds out of the northwest persisting through Wednesday, but dying down somewhat, becoming lighter on Thursday, and then becoming gusty out of the south into Friday as well. So again, perhaps not blowing directly toward the community, but it's still uncomfortably close. And again, we're going to have to see where this fire is in real time. We might get a better indication when the clouds clear out. But these, what we've looked at kind of just gives us a little bit of a sense as to where the fires are, what the winds are doing, and what that could do with the fire, and whether or not it could push us toward the town. So some communities, again, are in a lot more serious of a situation in the near term than some others, with the fire burning away from certain communities. Now, in terms of mobilization of fire crews and wildland fire equipment management, we've had a number of them today on Tuesday, notably from Quebec, 60 firefighters sent to Manitoba, and 99 have come from the U.S. also to Manitoba. And as we can see, the majority of our resources are being sent to Saskatchewan and Manitoba, where most of our problems are currently. And many of those, most of those resources are coming from all other provinces and jurisdictions, but it's still, these resources are spread very thin right now. And if you think about the size of these wildfires across the landscape and how intense they're burning, and really how small of an impact that humans have on the ground, and the fact that we can't get anywhere near these intense wildfires, it's very humbling. So you can still throw a lot of people, you can throw a lot of water bombers at some of these fires, but if they're burning really intensely, there's not much you can do until the wind and the weather really abate to help us get the upper hand on the situation. Let's take a look at the fire danger maps here for the next few days. This is on Tuesday. We can see just persistent extreme fire danger there across, northern Saskatchewan, northwestern Manitoba, and that's going to persist through the day on Wednesday and into Thursday, especially back into Saskatchewan there. Friday, Saturday, it looks like a little bit of cooling there, perhaps Saturday. If that system comes in, brings some rain, it might cool things down, but just several days still yet ahead of perhaps quite stressful and, gusty conditions, dry conditions. Really need some precipitation. So with that, is there any hope on the horizon? Well, looking a little bit further, this is based on a long-range model from the European. Now keep an eye on this region here in Saskatchewan and Manitoba. As we get into mid-June, it is indicating that there is a potential for a cooling and wetting trend here across northern Saskatchewan and Manitoba, and that spreads across the prairies as we get later into June. We really, really need this moisture to show up for obvious reasons. It'll really help the situation. It'll help wildland fire suppression efforts. It'll help reduce the drought that's starting to develop across the landscape with the heat and all the wind that we've been seeing. So really, really hoping that this really kind of happens. I mean, it's still a long ways out. It may not happen. But the next week or so, still, we have a higher confidence that things are going to be quite dry out there. But beyond that, we are seeing somewhat of a sign that things could become a little bit wetter. So we're all crossing our fingers for that outcome. Now, if you've been evacuated, we've been hearing from officials that it's a good idea to register with the Red Cross. You can do that at redcross.ca or call 1-800-863-6582. And always, of course, a good idea to stay informed. If you're in Saskatchewan, the Saskatchewan Public Safety Agency, or Manitoba, the Manitoba Wildfire Service should be providing updates. And of course, local media and Facebook can be helpful for finding information that's useful as well. And finally, whether we're an evacuee or not, it's always a good idea to be prepared for these events, especially if you live in the boreal forests of Canada at this time of the year. Visit getprepared.gc.ca for tips. If you just select the wildfire tab, you'll get some information on how to prepare for evacuations and also how to keep yourself safe from wildfire smoke. I mean, if you got to go outside, try to avoid spending much time out there. Wear an N95 mask. That would be ideal. If you're in the car, obviously keep the air on recirculate and keep all your windows shut. Smoke is really bad for you. So there's some good tips on that website. And of course, if anyone wants to donate to the Red Cross for our evacuees across Saskatchewan and Manitoba, we've got the 2025 Manitoba Wildfires Appeal and the 2025 Saskatchewan Wildfires Appeal. And you can find out more about that by going to redcross.ca or calling 1-800-418-1111. My thoughts and prayers are with everyone impacted during this time and really just rooting for that rain to show up to kind of get things cooling off out there. That's all for now. Thanks so much for joining, and we'll talk to you next time.